So if we hadn't have launched that client leadership program, and if we hadn't got that extra revenue from our clients, then we would have gone bankrupt. That extra revenue, while it didn't stop the losses, it curbed them. And it curbed them enough that we were able to get through that period. And after 13 years, that tap just suddenly turned off, and it killed us.
What period of time did it just, that tap stop then? Was it a short amount of time? Was it over the 6 months? Was it all at once?
Well, yeah,
or?
it was basically, yeah, it just stopped.
Trenton, hello, how are you?
Hey Chris, nice to see you.
And you, mate, thanks for coming on.
Good to be here.
Good. So look, we've been chatting a lot lately, and there's lots of topics that we could cover today, but one of the stories that you told me that I thought could really sort of resonate with agency owners at the moment, especially in the economic downturn, was this period that you spoke about where you basically had 6 consecutive months of losses and felt like throwing the towel in before turning that around into a profit and then eventually selling your agency. So I think a really good place to start today would be sort of wind back to 2017, when you were in that place, that struggling agency owner. Could you tell us a bit about some of the most difficult moments that you faced back then and what you needed to change in your business to get yourself out of that hole?
Yeah, we're going right in for the awfulness straight away.
Straight in, yeah.
So yeah, it was horrendous. So I'd been running the agency for about 13, 14 years. And generally we grew every year, and generally we were profitable. So, all good. And then this one year, our new business just fell off a cliff, and we had a 60% decline in revenue from new business, and it killed us. And it meant that we had 6 months of consecutive losses, losing hundreds and hundreds of thousands of pounds in the process. And it was utterly awful. And at the same time, my kids were very young, so they weren't sleeping very well. Just that year. They slept fine before that year, and they slept fine after that year. Yeah. But it was that year they decided to not sleep at night at all. So it was, without a shadow of a doubt, one of the worst years of my life. The stress, as I've said to you before, Chris, I'm astonished I still have hair, and that what I have is not completely grey. I've never... It's still there. Good. Yay. But the stress was just awful. And, after 13 years of doing it, being confronted with, it's all going to go. I'm going to lose everything. I've put my heart and soul into this business for 13 years, and it's all going to go. And then what am I going to do next? Like, I'm unemployable. I don't know what's going to happen next. So it was really some really dark times. I had a couple of panic attacks during that period, which I've never had before, never had since. I mean, it was a really low, awful period.
Did you go through that yourself, or did you have... so, for example, in my business, I've got Saeed, who's our COO, and for me, giving him that position and giving him that complete transparency to my agency, he knows every single aspect of it, and that makes my life as an agency owner so much easier because I've got someone to lean on. Did you have anyone like that? Yeah,
I had my managing director, who's brilliant. I had my leadership team. I actually had a brilliant leadership team around that time. So I spent, I'd say, 11 years or so failing miserably at putting together a good leadership team. But around that time, I'd managed to put together an exceptionally good, high-performing team. So, yeah, we all knew what was going on. We all knew the issues. And, I could obviously, open up a bit more to my managing director as well. And, obviously, friends and my wife and other friends and family who I'd be crying to. I also had an advisory board for the business, so 3 quite senior people from outside the agency, and they were amazing. Like it was, I was really impressed at how they all stepped up, because we paid them a very small amount of money for, like, I think overall about 3 days a year of input, like a half day every quarter and a few bits and bobs outside of that. And they basically, I had the person running WPP for the whole of the UK, dropping what she was doing to come and meet with us and to just kind of help us turn this around and come up with a proactive new business plan. Because for 13 years, it was just, we didn't have to do outbound new biz. It just came to us. We do all the marketing stuff. Yeah, it just came to us. We do all the usual marketing stuff, but we didn't really have outbound new biz, and we never needed to. And after 13 years, that tap just suddenly turned off, and it killed us.
What period of time did it just, that tap stop then? Was it a short amount of time? Was it over the 6 months? Was it all at once?
Well, yeah, it was basically, it just stopped. So at the start of the 6 months, probably a couple of months before, I just noticed that we were quite quiet for new biz. And with the kids not sleeping, I was kind of relieved. Okay, don't mind a bit of quietness for now because, things at home are really challenging. And then when that quietness in new biz continued, and then that started, after 2 or 3 months and started feeding into our P&L in a rather negative way, then, started to worry and, started talking to the advisory board, and they were fantastic. They were instrumental in helping us put together our first ever proactive new business plan. And I basically just spent 6 months killing myself to execute that. So, imagine the hardest you ever worked, right? A period of time where you've worked really hard. And hopefully it's at a time when your business is growing and things are going great. So you've got loads of energy and you're pumped up to do stuff. And then imagine your motivation is the exact opposite of that, where you're just like, oh my God, it's all falling to pieces. I'm done. I can't do this anymore. And then having those energy levels, which is where I was at, obviously, I then had to work harder than I'd literally worked for the entire 15 years.
So can you just talk us through, was there a light bulb moment where suddenly, right, this is the plan, this is what we've got to do? How did that plan come about?
Yeah.
How did that mindset change?
Yeah. It was working. It was working with the advisory board. So whilst I was down and out, I was just somehow finding energy to throw everything at this while barely sleeping at night because my kids were up all night. The main thing we did, and the thing that was hugely successful, was I started a couple of communities. So we were a user experience agency. So I started a community of design leaders, so brand only, people running teams, and digital leaders, again, brand only, people running teams. And it was like an exclusive community. It was like invite only. And I got them going, and then they just took on a life of their own. So every month across the two communities, we get about 35 people in our office, all our target clients, coming along for like a breakfast and then a roundtable discussion. And there was a whole structure to the roundtable discussion. It was essentially them kind of talking about what was going on in their businesses. So what was great about it is we didn't have to curate any content. We just facilitated their discussion. And as a result of running those, we started winning work. And so just by having these guys in the office, we had a really lovely office with a nice area for like events and roundtables and things. Mm-hmm. And just by running those in the office and kind of making those connections, we won work with Tesco and RBS and Vodafone and so on without even having to pitch. It's just remarkable. And that helped provide the launch pad where by the end of that 6-month period, in month 7, we broke even. Cue massive celebration with my leadership team and me, and just obviously celebrating with water because there was no money to tap water. Yeah, not bottled water, tap water, and bring your own food because we didn't make a loss. And yeah, it was those communities hugely successful. New business is really challenging, really difficult, and those communities were a lot of work, but they gave me great insight into what was going on within brands because I'd hear all their problems every month.
Exactly, yeah.
And B, I built up a really good network off the back of it. And C, ultimately, when the people coming felt like they had a need and they needed external support for it, we were front of mind.
Exactly, yeah. And how did you go about getting those people to come to those events then? Was it just outbound messaging, cold messaging, or was it friends of friends?
Yeah. Started off kind of with contacts, people I knew. So I'd message a bunch of friendly people I knew and say, hey, I'm starting this community. Are you potentially interested? And they basically wrote back saying, yeah, sounds good. Let me know when. I'll try and come along. And I did that with people from well-known brands. So as soon as I had like 4 or 5 people saying, yeah, I'm up for it, I could then reach out to a broader audience and say, I've got I'm starting this community. Here's the purpose of it. It's not an agency sales thing. You get to meet your peers, people doing the same job as you. And by the way, the people doing the same jobs for you at brand A, B, and C are coming along too. Are you in? And it was, it was quite successful. It wasn't too hard to get people along.
How about the wider team at your agency then? So at that time where you were losing money, were they aware of how bad things were? How did you sort of approach their mindset? Because obviously you can't put that fear into people because they're just going to look for another job, right? They think they're going to lose their job. How did you get them on board and on that journey to help?
I mean, to be fair, what I find when you have like difficult times in your business, what I've always found is it actually galvanizes people. People kind of like because people can see that things aren't going well, right? Because they know that they're not that busy. So everyone knows like something's going on. We generally talked about our finances with the business every 3 months or so. And I think in terms of the way the months fell with our 6-month period of downturn, I think the first month or two was in the previous quarter and the last month or two was in the last quarter. So we didn't have too many times where we'd report back just how awful it was. We were always truthful. To be honest, it galvanized people and they were just like, right, what can we do to help? But one of the things we did about a year before is I set up this client leadership program internally, which also was hugely successful. I feel like I keep saying about these things I did, which was hugely successful. There are like 5 things I did in the 15 years that were hugely successful. Yeah, and about 500 that were massive failures. So the failures by far outweighed the successes by about 100 times. Anyway, this was also something very, very successful. One of the few things I did that really worked. And so we were pottering along, doing okay as an agency. And suddenly what we did, UX, became very mainstream. And before we knew it, we were pitching against the likes of Accenture and PwC and IBM. And that's a different level, right? So we knew we had to up the ante. We knew we had to kind of improve the way we were with clients. We were good, don't get me wrong, but anytime we needed to inspire a stakeholder, or anytime there was a senior stakeholder involved, or anytime there was a problem with a client, me or someone from my leadership team would invariably have to get involved. And we were like, well, how do we extend those client leadership skills across the entire business? And we did. So we had, me and my MD were doing a planning session, and we came up with this random idea of like Friday skills. So every Friday, 9 to 9:30, you had to be in the office. Pre-COVID, right? 9 to 9:30, you had to be there. You couldn't be with a client. You couldn't be doing a new business pitch, including me. You couldn't be doing anything. Everyone had to be there unless you were on holiday or sick or dead. Those were our 3 exceptions that we made clear. Like, we put it out there that we were going to do it, so we had to. So we started coming up with what it meant to be a leader to our clients, what it meant to lead and inspire them. And the mantra was, look, doing amazing work is only half the battle. I had a bunch of great consultants who did great work, who were very passionate about it. But I wanted to get the message across that doing great work is only half of your job. And the other half is having clients think you're doing amazing work. And just doing amazing work by itself is not enough to have clients think you're doing amazing work. And we're going to now do a skills program every single week to teach you how to make clients think you're doing amazing work. So after about 6 months, we really started seeing the benefit. And after we launched it the following year, we got a 35% increase in revenue from our existing accounts. So big revenue impact, which coincided with new business falling off a cliff. Coincidentally, they were nothing to do with each other. So if we hadn't have launched that client leadership program, and if we hadn't got that extra revenue from our clients, then we would have gone bankrupt. That extra revenue, while it didn't stop the losses, it curbed them. And it curbed them enough that we were able to get through that period.
So that, getting the clients to think you're doing great work, that's not bullshitting them though, right? That's more educating them on what you're actually doing and showcasing the good stuff, is it? Or talk us through what you mean by that.
Yeah. It's about knowing how to handle yourself with a client. So if a client is not happy about something, it's about knowing how to handle that conversation. Or if you've done some work and it's really brilliant, you don't go in and talk about the minutiae and the process of all the bits and bobs that you've done, because I know that's your passion, but it's not the client's passion. The client is more interested in whatever it may be, hitting a certain target that they've been given. So if you're going to go in to do a show and tell, for example, and you're going in to present your work, the objective of that meeting is not to present your work. The objective of that meeting is to have the client do, think, or feel X, whatever X might be, whatever you want them to do, think, or feel off the back of the meeting. And you're going to present your work, but that's a means to an end. And the narrative that you use to wrap that up and the way that you present it should be in line with what you want the client to do, think, or feel. Not in line with, well, I need to go and present my work now. And so there were so many things that we taught the team in terms of how to handle conflict, when a client's not happy, influencing techniques, persuasion techniques, how to build up rapport, how to present in a way that influences and gets people excited, storytelling, how to get clients emotionally committed to your meetings so they really want to be there and they're on your team, and so on. And yeah, it really worked.
So can we delve into some of them a bit?
So it's all about the outcome. defining your outcome and understanding the client's outcome. And the way that you understand the client's outcome is when you go and meet your client, you don't just say yes to everything they ask. Instead, what you do is when they start talking about their concerns, is you let them keep talking. Don't try and persuade them. So what many of us do is as soon as a client says something that they're unhappy about or they disagree with, we make the massive mistake of trying to persuade them otherwise. And that's the worst thing you can do. Yeah, no, it's not even getting defensive necessarily, Chris. It may not be. It might just be coming up with a response about why you think that what they're saying isn't correct and why, you think this. And actually, the thing that you do whenever a client comes to you and they're not happy about something, they're asking questions about something, they feel concerned, is you stop talking and you start listening. And you let the client talk, and then you encourage them to talk more. And you do a technique which I call draining the fishbowl. So you imagine that your client's head is basically a fishbowl, right? Like one of those glass bowls filled with water, no fish in there, but just water. You have to let your client drain the fishbowl. Let them say all the things they're saying. Nod your head, listen, get it off their chest, and then ask them questions, even though you're really annoyed, you've done great work and they're not recognising it, and you've burnt through all your hours and then some. Let them get it off their chest. Not just get off their chest, but really explore what they're saying. Really ask questions, reflect back the things they're saying, let them drain that fishbowl completely until a point where they're like, okay, well, what have you got to say? Come on, tell me something here. I'm doing all the talking. And that's when they're ready for their fishbowl to be replenished with your water. And they're ready for you to start speaking and put more water in. But the problem is, if a client or anyone indeed says something that you disagree with, we wait for them to stop talking, or maybe wait for a pause, and then we tell them our point of view. And that's the worst thing, because then you're pouring water in and the goldfish bowl is going to overflow. So you let them get it all off their chest in a way perhaps you haven't done before, insofar as you're questioning, you're validating what they're saying, you're really getting them to empty out every last one of those thoughts, and you're really exploring what success looks like for them. Because what they're asking for is just what they think is like something that will help them achieve success. But if you can understand what success is, what that real outcome is they want, then the thing they're asking for, they may not need that. There might be another solution that is also good for you, that is better for you. And that will be fine by the client, because then it's win-win. So you let them drain their fishbowl, and then it's your turn to respond. And a really great thing I like to say, a really great way of, I think, explaining how you respond is to explain to people what the opposite of agreeing is. So, Chris, let me ask you. We haven't even prepared for this. Who knows what you're going to say? What do you think is the opposite of agreeing?
Well, it's disagreeing, obviously.
And I'm afraid the answer is not disagreeing. You see, the thing is, the opposite of agreeing is actually not agreeing.
Okay.
So just
Which
because
is surely
you don't
disagreeing, though, isn't it true?
Well, there's a slight difference. It's great question, great point there. I would say they're two different things, and let me explain why. Just because you don't agree with what a client or someone is saying, it doesn't mean you have to disagree. Right? You can not agree, but you don't have to disagree.
You don't have to defend against it. You don't have to say, well, actually, you're wrong.
Yeah. So you let your client drain their fishbowl. Oh, this applies to anyone, right? You let them drain their fishbowl, get everything out, really explore the core of the issue, get to the bottom of the issue and what success looks like for them. And then when it's your turn to respond, you just explain what success looks like for you. So it may be, in this case, you might say to your client, okay, you need to get to X, Y, and Z, because you've let them drain their fishbowl. You now really understand what success looks like for them. And then you say, okay, brilliant. So as I've told you previously, we've burned through 150% of our hours this month. So we don't have a huge amount of time. And I really want to get you to that point. What can we do here? How do we get to that point in a way that works for you and that works for us? And that's such a different conversation than just going in and telling them why they're wrong and why what you've done is okay and that you've burnt through the hours and they need to pay more.
Yeah, and I think the irony of this a lot of the time is that the goalposts move as well, don't they? So you're actually working to X, Y, and Z thinking that was their initial objective or that was in the brief, and that has changed, and actually letting them get that off their chest or empty their fishbowl, you actually understand what's important to them now. And I think that probably works internally as well, to be honest. Yeah, but I think the other thing that really struck me in your book, the directors, the thinkers, the socialisers and the relators, how do you change that conversation with each of those character styles?
Yeah. So, 4 different communication styles, which are based on 2 different criteria. Whether or not you prioritise problem solving versus relationship building. So we all lean towards one ahead of the other, sometimes by a lot, sometimes only by a little bit. So people who are more into problem solving like to kind of, get on with things, and people into relationships prefer to kind of, spend time with people. And that's one of the axes. And then the other axis, the other variable, is about how direct you are. So if you're someone who just kind of likes to talk, likes to say it how it is, versus someone who's perhaps, a little bit indirect, a little bit more perhaps introverted. And those are the differences. So you've got a socializer, for example, which Chris, you are. That's your, I've worked it out from spending a bit of time with you, that's your communication
what makes
stuff.
Me a socializer then?
So, okay, please tell me if I'm correct or incorrect with this. I have a little quiz you can take and we can verify it. But okay. A socializer, by the way, all the styles are great. So you must never think like, oh, I'm this style, that's worse than that one or better than that one. They're all great, and we need a mix of all 4 different styles. So that's very important. Just want to clarify that. A socializer, generally, you are quite outgoing, quite almost like jazz handy. You get quite excited, very positive, very full of energy, great at, like, say, leading a business and inspiring the people around you. You're very happy broadcasting and sharing what's going on in your world. So, you've got a great following on LinkedIn. Everyone who has a great following on LinkedIn is very likely going to be a socializer, because you're someone who's quite extroverted, quite to kind of say what's going on. And you're quite big picture thinking. You're not necessarily into process. You'd rather get a COO. You'd rather get a COO in who's more into the detail, so you can have the big ideas. And you're great at big ideas, by the way. Socializer, you're the best at creativity. You're going to change the world. You have so many ideas that often they're really crazy, but some of them are so crazy that they may actually work and like just be game changing. And that's where you as a socializer, you tend to be at your best with people, big ideas. Kind of leading and inspiring people. So those are socializers. So if you're, and a lot of senior clients tend to be socializers and directors. So if it's a socializer, you want to go in and if you're presenting your work, you want to present your work in such a way about how it might lead to game-changing impact. Like, that work by itself probably isn't going to have game-changing impact, but the potential of it could be huge. It's
from macro rather than the micro.
Yeah, macro and the future. I'm guessing, Chris, as a socializer, you get excited by the future, whereas styles like relator and thinker, you get a bit more nervous about the future, and you're a bit more risk averse. So if you're meeting with a socializer, don't just focus on what you've done. Focus on the impact it can have and the big picture change that could happen that would make your client be like, wow, I've changed the world. Even though it's like a bit pie in the sky and a bit like, well, maybe that would happen. That's what you do with a socializer. And if you're meeting a director so like I said, generally, not always, but generally, the more senior clients tend to be socializers and directors. If you're meeting with a director, which is me, by the way, directors, we're blunt, we're to the point. We just want to get on with things. You don't even need to ask a director, how are you? It's just from a director's point of view, it's just such an arbitrary question. And it's not going to help.
The detail. So
just get on with it. Yeah. As a director. So for you as a socializer, Chris, I'm guessing you want to start your meetings with a chat, checking in, let's build up some energy together. But for a director, that's not how you want to be. You just want to get on with it. So for people who prioritize relationships more, which will be your socializers and your relators, you can find it quite hard meeting with a director because it's like, do you not think of me as a person? Am I just like a robot or something? And they can feel like robots. And it's not that they don't care about you as a person. It's just that as a director, you get your motivation and your energy from achieving things. You still care about people. You still have friends and family that you care for and love. But you really get the most amount of energy from achievement. So if you're presenting to a director, then you really want to focus on how your work is going to help them achieve their immediate goals. So find out what their KPIs are for that year, that 6 months, that quarter. And then when you present your work, do it in the context of how they're going to achieve those KPIs. Don't bother talking about pie in the sky, big picture impact. That doesn't motivate them. That'll motivate someone who's more of a socializer. Now, the way you can tell if someone's a director or a socializer, Chris, well, yeah, because that's what they're focused on. I mean, look, with all these styles, there are good things and there are bad things. So directors are great for just getting on with it. But the downside of being a director is you tend to be quite blinkered. There's not much creativity. You see the end goal and you just go in a straight line to get there as quick as possible. And that may not be the best way of going there. You get a bit blinkered a bit not open to new ideas, a bit too much around logic and not thinking about people. So it's not always great. That's why you need all 4 styles. Same for socializers. You're great as a socializer, great for big picture ideas. And sometimes we just need you to come back down to earth so we can talk about the thing that we need to do today, and so on. There's also thinkers and relators who also bring great things to the conversation and great ways of being. And again, there are downsides of those kind of styles. That's why for any business, and in your business, Chris, you ideally want a mix of all 4 styles because you all bring something different to the table. But what's really important is that you all accept each other and that you all recognise. So if I'm a thinker, I might be like, oh, that Chris guy, yeah, he's great. He's so high level. There's nothing about the detail. And if I'm a thinker, I'm really into the detail. But then I've got to appreciate, well, he may not be into the detail and I may struggle to connect with him because I like to talk about the detail. But he brings something to this business that I can't bring. He brings creativity and fresh thinking and inspiration to the team. And that's a really good thing. So we all just have to accept each other. And the moment we all start accepting each other and indeed accepting clients for the way they're talking to us, well, everything becomes so much easier.
So in your business, did you train your team to be able to deal with all 4 characters? Or, I mean, something we do, especially in pitches and things like that, and I'm sure a lot of other agencies do, is sort of casting. So you look at the character of the client or the potential client, and you think, well, who in my team kind of has the same personality type, or who's going to deliver what they're after? How did you approach that in that new business world? Did you say, right, you go and chat to Mr. Tesco's because Mr. Tesco's is a thinker like you, or do you chuck a socialiser over to Mr. Thinker Tesco?
Yeah, we'd try to, take the right people into the pitch with, for who the client was. To be honest, in reality, it's who's available, right? So, well, during our 6-month downturn, there were a lot of people available. So there was a huge amount of availability. So yeah, when you got availability, yeah, we'd like, if we could work out roughly what the client was like, then we would take someone, similar communication style. But yeah, often it's just like who you've got, and then you've got to kind of we've got to kind of work at it and prep the pitch to pitch it in a way that we think is going to work for them. So again, if it's more of a socializer person, we're going big picture ideas. Oh, and here's how we'll deliver it. And if it's more of like a director style, then it's like, here's how we'll deliver it in order to achieve your short to medium term objectives.
Yeah, sure. So going back into your business and that time of that real struggle, in terms of like culture, how did you deal with that team? How did you galvanise them? How did you motivate them? How did you get them to really work?
To be fair, we had a really good culture. I did a lot of work on the culture from day one. I always wanted the agency to be a place that I would be happy working at, and I went out of my way to work on that. So I think culture stems from for a smallish business, culture always stems from the founder anyway, and then the behaviour of the leadership team. And I worked very hard to make sure that I and my leadership team were exemplars of the behaviours that we wanted. So when we had the downturn, people were generally on board with, we're having a difficult time. Let's work, what can we do to kind of drum up more business? To be fair, like I said, they were smashing it at that time because we were doing so well with existing clients. They were just absolutely smashing it. So it was such a shame because it was like, we're doing really badly as a company, but all of you are doing amazingly. Look how much extra revenue you've got from our clients and the quality of the work and the relationships you're building with clients. The new skills we're teaching you. Wow. Sorry, new business going really terrible and it's causing us to have big problems. But people really got on board and started coming up with, ideas for things that they might be able to help with. To be fair, people who are kind of client facing and doing delivery work, they're not great at new business, right? As agency leaders, we get tired of new business always seeming to fall to us and the leadership and maybe a new biz person or two, and that no one else seems to have any interest in it. You can get people more commercially aware and you can get people to have more of an interest in it, but they're never going to be that good at it because they care about the delivery. They care about doing the work. That's why they're doing that job, right? So you can't try and fit a square peg in a round hole.
No, but surely having that team, I mean, if like you say, that person in delivery, they could be working on an account and in their eyes, they're doing a great job on that account. Results are great, but the business around them is falling apart.
Wasn't that bad.
Right, but it was
but financially, we were doing
financially.
badly.
I will go on to the business model in a minute of perhaps why new business was so important. But, surely having those people there that are going, well, I'm doing a good job. It's not my fault. How did you do anything to sort of, get them out of that and give them a better understanding of the business so that they could support you as well? Or
Yeah, that's a great question. To be honest, it wasn't like that because so as a business, we had three core rules, and that was it. That was the only rules, and they were in order of priority. So rule number 1: always act within the best interests of the business. That was the first rule. And you had to work out what that meant because these were smart, grown-up people. Rule number 2: never do anything that makes it harder for one of your colleagues to do their job. And then rule number 3 is do whatever it takes to get your job done really well and achieve the kind of, the targets that everyone has around certain things. And that was it. And that was our rule. So we really had a culture of trust, empowerment and collaboration. There wasn't like micromanagement in there. People could work from home as and whenever they wanted. This is well before COVID. People could come and go as they pleased, and they were trusted to do the job. We did a lot of work around also autonomy, mastery and purpose. I don't know if you know, it's like Dan Pink's mantra. He's like a self-help business guru type person. And we did a lot around autonomy, mastery and purpose, which was basically... so we talk about this publicly and say, right, those are the three, from what we understand and what we believe, those are the three things that are going to be core motivators to you. So how do we give you more autonomy? So here's the structure that we've got, and as a team and as an individual, you need to go away and work out how you get the most amount of autonomy whilst getting the support the business needs. Then what do you want to become a master of? What do you want to become a specialist in over the next year? And then finally, purpose was like, right, here's our business vision, and we worked hard to come up with a vision and a mission statement. What is it you need to do to help us achieve that vision as well as delivering your work? And we did loads of work around that, and it really galvanised the troops and got a really nice culture. And then... we always did loads of internal training and stuff together and invested in the team. But then once we started this Friday skills thing, I mean, it was great in terms of the impact with clients, as I've talked about. But what was also great is how it brought everyone together, because we were all doing something that... and all learning new skills together and all leveling up at the same time. So what it meant was like people all had something to talk about, and they were getting all this personal development. And I was getting all these stories from people about the skills that they were learning at work, how they were applying them at home. Some really amazing stuff. I remember I had this one girl who was the brilliant project manager, and she'd never done a presentation in her life. Like, she was great at her job, but she would not ever do anything that involved presenting. And as part of the skills program, she had to do a presentation to the whole company and get critiqued for it in front of everyone. We all did. I did. Everyone did. We took it in turns. And she did it, and I helped her with it, and then she smashed it, did an absolutely amazing job. And 2 months later, she got married, and she did a speech at her own wedding.
In PowerPoint.
But it was like... It was amazing. And so, to be honest, like when we got to that downturn, there wasn't any grumbling of like, well, I'm doing well. We just explained what was going on. I think if you're honest and transparent with everyone, they just respect that. So it was like, you guys are smashing it with clients. Here's how we've done. Everyone knew how we did new biz because we'd already a few years before started doing a lot more transparency around new business. Because I remember once being like, I wonder how much people know about new biz. We had a company meeting and I said, right, here's all the new accounts we've won in the last few months. I'd like you all to write down how we won each of those accounts. Like what was it? What were the activities that we did in order to win those accounts? And you got something like a 5% success rate across the team in terms of people actually knowing how we won new business. So after that, we did a lot of work to talk about new business in our monthly meeting and about kind of what was going on, but especially for the ones that we'd won, how we went about winning those and the process. Because people who don't work in new business don't understand the level of work that's required just to get one new client in the door. I mean, it's like a full-time job. Well, it is, for many weeks to make that happen. And so we really raised awareness of that. So then when we had the downturn, we could be honest. Look, you're clearly smashing it with clients. Revenue's higher than it's ever been with clients. Big increase on last year. Here's what's happened with new biz. We've shared with you before how we do new biz, and it's always worked for 13 years. And it stopped working. And these are our hypotheses why. But whatever it is, it's not working. And therefore...
And what were those,
here's
out
our
of
plan.
interest?
Oh, we had a list of about 10 things. I don't think it was any one in particular. I think it was the perfect storm of them all coming together. I think probably the biggest one was the likes of Accenture and IBM and PwC invading our industry and just wiping the floor. So, they'd go in for pitches and they'd say, right, all of that dev work that you need doing, all that IT stuff, we'll do that. And the UX thing, which we would normally pitch for, we'll give you for free. Can't really compete with free very easily. So I think that was one of the biggies. There were a whole bunch of hypotheses we had. So we just explained this to people and said, right, we're working with our advisory board. We haven't got the plan yet, but we're hoping to get that ready next month and we'll let you know. So it was just transparency, really. And then we did some redundancies during that period, which obviously is awful. But again, everyone gets it. They understand. It doesn't just come out of the blue. We've been talking to people about this. So they understood it. And again, for the guys, it's just a small number of people. And I didn't go on LinkedIn the next day and post a photo of myself crying, having done it.
Crying.
So obviously awful for the people involved. But the people, 90% of the business who are still there, they get it. They understand that, this is life and we've done everything we can to avoid this and we generally look after the team, but the reality is what it is. So we didn't have a problem with anyone. And I guess that's just because of all the work we put into the culture and openness and accountability to the leadership and building up that culture of trust, collaboration and empowerment.
So I think, it all boils down to communication, really, doesn't it? You're sort of over-communicating to that team. How do you think business owners and agency owners can now approach that post-COVID? Because I know your team was remote anyway, but one of the challenges I've definitely faced is because everyone's not here, you kind of need to find ways to communicate with them. And do you email them every day with an update? How do you know? How do you communicate with them? This is the plan, this is the strategy. And you talked about having a quarterly meeting, a monthly meeting, and then this Friday session. And something else I'd love to know is, how did you start those Friday sessions? How did you know what to put in those half-an-hour segments? Did you do that yourself? Did you get someone in to facilitate it?
To be honest, basically, we kind of made it up as we went along. But by putting it out there and telling everyone we were going to do this, we had to do it. So generally, the way we'd work out what we were doing is we would we'd meet as a leadership team and as part of a regular meeting. And one of the agenda items was, what are the problems we're seeing in the business in terms of the way people are with clients? What are people not doing with clients that perhaps we'd like them to do more of? And we discussed that every time we met as a leadership team, because, there'd be fresh examples in our minds then of just things we'd seen, not due to someone's fault. It's just because if you haven't trained people on these skills, then you can't expect them to have them. As agency leaders, we just assume everyone's going to be great with clients, and then we get annoyed when they're not, and they do what we think are really stupid things with our clients and really commercially naive things. So, well, have you taken the time to help them understand these things and given them the skills to do this? And the answer is invariably no. So, to be honest, we just put it out there, and then we had to do it. And so and we did it ourselves. We got someone in a little bit. There's one guy that we used, but the vast majority, 95%, we did ourselves. And to be fair, we could, because A, we had a training academy in the business, so we knew how to do training already. We've been doing it for 13 years since inception. B, we did a bit of strategic kind of digital transformation work with clients, like proper business change stuff. So we knew a bit about business change as well. And C, for me as a director personality type, if I'm just determined to achieve things, I just have to get things done. So I did. So we had the know-how that I think, forgetting about that third one, we had the know-how that I suspect a lot of agency leaders wouldn't perhaps have because of that background that we had. But the other thing we did as well was we also came up with what it like a kind of client guides of how you should be with clients. So we kind of documented this. So we came up with how you do a web credible presentation, and we had a presentation pack that was this is how you do it. Ultimately go in and present and be yourself, but this is the framework and how you structure it and what you want to achieve and the best practices. Yeah. And then what we did for presentation skills was every single 6 weeks, 3 people went and did a 5-minute presentation to the whole business, and each one got feedback in front of the whole business for 5 minutes, including me, including everyone. And we just drilled drilled into people presentation skills that way. And then we'd have like another kind of client experience guide that we got the whole business to help put together. So we spent many sessions on the different kind of guidelines and how we should be with clients and how people wanted to implement those. We came up with a series of behaviors as well as values. We also have behaviors of how we expect you to behave internally and with clients. And then in each behavior, we'd spend 2 sessions. One, having people explore it, what it meant to them, what they're doing at the moment that's perhaps not in line with the behavior, what they can do more of, how they can support their team members to do more of that behavior. And then the second session, we'd get them all to make a poster about it. And then eventually we'd take those posters and get them properly designed up and put them up on the wall. So it wasn't just the training, it was also what we were doing outside of the training that augmented it. But the relentlessness of it, the small bite-sized chunks of training every single week is what ground in genuine behavior change. And after we sold and I left the business, I got a message from one of the guys who'd been there for a few years. And it just made me want to cry. And it made like everything worthwhile, this message. You know, you go through loads of ups and downs, mostly downs. Mostly like, oh God, it's all falling to pieces and I'm making it up and everyone else out there seems to know what they're doing and I don't have a Scooby-Doo what I'm doing. But he sent me this message where he was like, this really long message saying, thank you so much for everything, blah, 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 blah. I've been through a transformation here, and so many of my colleagues have been through the same kind of transformation, and it's impacted me not just at work, but in my personal life, and I'm never going to be the same again. And I'm so grateful to you. Thank you so much. And I mean, you know, you just like, oh my God, that's the nicest thing anyone said. This program really, really had a massive impact, and it was fantastic.
So in terms of like, is that retention, new biz, is that them combined? I mean, your business model itself obviously heavily relied on that new business front. So were these retainer clients that you had, or, you know, was the job of this training to keep clients for longer, or to win new clients, or to keep them happier?
It was everything.
Or a mixture of all three?
To make people better with clients, able to deal with clients, able to sell in their work better. So that when you present your work, if your client's not happy, you're going to have rework, and then the debate begins about, well, is it billable or not? Because if the client feels it's not good enough, then they're not happy about paying
you can't
it.
Really charge
no, there's a conflict. Well, you might want to, but you've got a conflict. So if you get better at selling in your work to clients, if you get better at explaining how what you've done ticks all the boxes of their objectives and how what you've done solves all of the problems that they've told you about, rather than, okay, and here's the minutiae of why we've done it this way, then they're more likely to sign it off and you're more likely to progress to the next step. And we saw that. We saw that one of the benefits of it was the efficiency savings, in that clients were signing off work. Yeah, don't get me wrong. They were generally happy before this and they were generally signing off work, but they were signing it off even more. And there were fewer instances of clients claiming, oh no, this isn't quite right. Because if they did claim that, my team had the tools to know how to get around that and to work with them so that that we'd come to a common agreement of like, okay, well, maybe that's not quite right, but if we do this little thing over here, we'll get it there. So yeah, it helped in every aspect of the business. So
any company or agency looking to start this themselves that have been inspired by what you said today, what's the best way for them to start?
So, well, you can do it yourself, and we did. And like I said, we had, we had the understanding of how training works and how to deliver really interactive training that sticks. And then we had experience around transformation. So you can do it yourself, or you could outsource it. So after, I sold the business and exited, I started a new company called Team Sterka. And basically we offer this program. So we have this, a curriculum, a formal curriculum, and it's only for agencies, and it's basically to give your entire team those client-facing skills to level everyone up so that they spend a whole bunch of time doing amazing work, and then they also have the tools and the confidence and the capability to make sure that clients think they're doing really amazing work.
And I guess to get a taste of that, they can read this.
Yes, so obviously, so when I started the business, I also wrote a book around what we teach, called Human Powered. And a lot of it's in the book, so you can read the book as well. One thing I've learned, though, is that all of these skills can be learned. So being really good with clients, being able to build up rapport, being able to get through tricky situations, have tricky conversations, all of that is a skill. And like with any skill, some people are naturally really good at it, and some people aren't. And as with any skill, we can all learn it and get better at it.
Well, look, how do people get hold of you? I know they're not going to be able to get hold of you for a while, are they? Because you're disappearing for, is it 6 months to go around?
Yes, about to go on sabbatical, travelling. Yes, being with my children 24/7, including sleeping in the same room every single night for the next 6 months. So maybe we'll be back in 3 weeks because it'll be like, enough. We can't spend any more time
You've had
together.
enough. Yeah.
Yeah.
General LinkedIn. And how they find your book? Is it on Amazon?
Yeah, books on Amazon and every book website. But LinkedIn's the best place. I'll still be LinkedIning while I'm abroad.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much for coming on, Trenton. It's been fascinating.
Brilliant. Thanks, Chris. Really good chatting to you.
Nice one. Cheers, mate.